Luke's heart raced as he stood frozen in the liquor store, hiding behind a shelf. His friend Rob was only a few feet away, kneeling before a robber with a knife. Luke could have intervened, but fear gripped him. The knife flashed, and Rob fell in a pool of blood. The guilt of his inaction would haunt Luke for the rest of his life. 6 months later, Luke and his 3 friends decided to honor Rob's memory with a hiking trip through the remote wilderness of Sweden. But tension hung in the air. Luke's guilt over Rob's death lingered. When Dom injured his knee, Hutch suggested a shortcut through the forest. As they entered the thick woods, an unsettling quiet surrounded them. The deeper they went, the darker and more oppressive the forest became. Strange symbols were carved into trees, and they stumbled upon the mutilated remains of a large animal, hung as if for a ritual. The forest was not just eerie, it felt alive, watching them. Night fell quickly, and rain poured down, soaking them. Desperate for shelter, they found an old abandoned cabin in the middle of the woods. Inside, they discovered bizarre relics, a strange wooden effigy of a headless figure with antlers for hands in the attic. Exhausted, they decided to stay the night. That night, the forest invaded their minds. Each man experienced horrific nightmares. Luke relived Rob's murder, helplessly watching his friend die again and again. When they woke, their terror became all too real. Luke discovered deep cuts slashed across his chest, as if something had clawed him in his sleep. Panic began to set in. The next day, they tried to find their way out, but the forest seemed to shift around them. Something was stalking them, always just out of sight. They came across the remains of another hiker, impaled on branches as part of some grotesque ritual. Fear turned to terror. Phil was the first to disappear, dragged screaming into the trees by an unseen force. Hutch, usually the strong leader, became frantic, realizing they were being hunted. Soon, they all saw it, a monstrous creature, half human, half deer, its glowing eyes watching them from the shadows. The creature, a Joten, was part of an ancient pagan ritual, and it had chosen them as its prey. As they fled, Hutch was taken next, yanked into the darkness without a sound. Luke and Dom, desperate and exhausted, stumbled into a strange village hidden deep in the woods. There, they found people who worshipped the creature, offering sacrifices to it in exchange for eternal life. The villagers told Luke and Dom they would be the next offerings. Luke refused to accept this fate. When Dom was brutally sacrificed before his eyes, Luke snapped. He fought back, setting fire to the village and killing one of the worshippers. The creature pursued him, crashing through the forest with terrifying speed. But Luke ran, fueled by fear and desperation, until he reached the edge of the forest. Just as the creature lunged at him, Luke stepped into the open sunlight. The Joten, bound by ancient rules, couldn't cross the threshold. It howled in frustration. Luke stood at the edge of the forest, bloodied and traumatized, but alive. The creature's cries echoed in the distance as he walked away, free but forever scarred by the nightmare he had survived.